On this edition of Talkin' Science, we're now under 5 days to go for the long-awaited return of Hayabusa-2, the Japanese spacecraft that collected a sample of near-Earth asteroid Ryugu in 2018. A batch of research papers indicate astronauts are suffering rapid aging the longer they stay in space. And new research from Japanese radio telescopes pin the supermassive black hole at the centre of our galaxy around 2,000 light years closer than thought. But we're not in any danger. Those stories, plus the headlines on this edition of Talkin' Science. It's Tuesday, the 1st of December, 2020.
Beaming around the world with the latest science and space news on Facebook Watch, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. This is Talkin' Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
And it's a very happy Talkin' Science Tuesday to Dr. Brad Tucker.
How's it going?
Really good, my friend, really good. We have officially made it to December in the hellish year of 2020. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's just been about survival, but yes, we're rolling on and lots of exciting science happening.
Absolutely, and of course people can find you on Twitter at btucker22, on Facebook, Dr. Brad Tucker. I'm on Twitter at Miramat86, and of course Trekzone all over social media. Just search for Trekzone. Brad, let's dive straight into the show without any further ado.
Talking Science Headlines.
Hey Brad, first up this week, a faint superplanet has been discovered by a radio telescope for the very first time.
Yeah, it's a planet we call a brown dwarf. So these are large planets that some hypothesize are really actually more failed stars. So they fall in this gap regime between planets and stars. What it means is they're big objects, but they're relatively hard to find because they're what we call cool. They don't emit or have a lot of light. And because of that, people are trying to find new techniques besides just looking at infrared, which is the traditional way. And here, they used a radio telescope in Europe to actually potentially find a new one. And it looks like it may open up a new option for finding these objects.
And these brown dwarfs are too small to become stars, so they don't undergo the same nuclear fusion that fuel bright stars like our sun. So quite a remarkable find.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. And, a lot of people want to find brown dwarfs, again, for this link in the evolutionary phase between planets and stars. And what that all means. And, if there's easier or different ways of finding them, which offer the benefits of radio telescopes where you can scan large patches of sky, it's a very cool option that we may not normally have.
Now, in Florida, NASA is beginning assembly of its mega rocket, the SLS. Now, this is really cool because this is getting ready for its maiden flight next year.
That's right. Next October currently is it scheduled, but after the static firing tests as we talked about and the testing of the Orion capsule, they're really essentially just assembling all the components now and they're doing it in position in Florida. And so, it's kind of just that next step closer to being a reality.
And this is going to be the rocket that's going to take astronauts back to the moon and even further beyond. It's an impressive sight seeing these photos.
It is. It's nice to see it become a reality because it is a behemoth. It will be the thing that NASA is going to be using for at least a decade, probably, if not more, as they go back to the moon and go to the Mars and all those sorts of things. So it's nice to see that happening and to see the beginning of it, so to speak.
It is incredible to think that what's being assembled now is going to be used in about 12 months' time. So a lot of time taken to make sure everything's right, getting everything correct before proceeding on with Artemis.
That's exactly right. It's they want to have that maiden flight as soon as possible so they can get on with Artemis. And, so it all has to be integrated. It all has to be put together and all tested before they even do the test flight. So these are important milestones and something that seemingly, I guess, was kind of just far off and never going to happen almost to some degree. It felt like it is more and more reality.
And Brad, last up in our headlines, the first all-sky survey from Australia's new radio telescope, the ASKAP, has been released.
So this has been chugging away over there in Murchison Observatory in WA. and they've discovered things like fast radio bursts, as we've talked about, and all sorts of things. And one of the projects has been an all sky scan in the radio wavelengths, the low frequencies that ASKAP is looking at. And so they've just released the first data release of something like 300 million objects, which is a really cool milestone for this project, since this will directly build up to eventually what is the square kilometer array, this huge radio telescope that's a kilometer by a kilometer.
Yeah, so ASKAP standing for the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder, as you said, over there in Murchison in Western Australia, which is a designated radio quiet zone, which is one of the few locations in the world where they can put a square kilometre of radio telescopes and not have to worry about anyone with mobile phones or anything like that. The kangaroos just aren't technologically advanced.
Not yet, anyway. We've had better experiences with emus, but we'll see how it goes. But it is a big achievement for this project, and it's a great step for the science it's going to produce. Because a lot of these all sky surveys, by doing this continuous mapping, they just provide a huge, rich data set that lots of different science cases could use. So instead of trying to get time on the telescope to look at your individual thing, by just providing this huge catalog, it does the same purpose in a more efficient way.
Talking science, stories of the week.
Brad, on to our stories of the week. And first up, gearing up for Hayabusa-2's return. They had a press conference yesterday where they confirmed everything is on track for Sunday morning's re-entry and landing of the capsule. This is getting very, very exciting as we get closer.
It is. It's been this mission a decade in the waiting, so to speak, for this for these samples to actually reach Earth. And as you said, they had the kind of the week out press conference for things like approvals to come back, the sequencing they need to do, and the steps that will be undertaken, I guess, next Sunday for the landing to actually happen. And, it's good to see that it's all under control. And obviously, crunch time on Saturday into Sunday will be very, there'll be a lot of work happening, a lot of ink, so to speak, because it is a big mission to see it going. But it's nice that it's essentially finally here.
Yeah, the recovery team has been in Woomera setting up all the equipment they need to track Hayabusa on its return, and some photos that they released yesterday showed that they've been setting these up in the blistering Australian outback sun, which is very different to any other sun that anyone on Earth can experience, because 40-degree temperatures already out there in Woomera on the RAAF range. Just incredible. Not a lot of shade around. It is the it's a harsh environment, but it is absolutely perfect to have a space capsule return, because there's nothing it's going to hit.
This is one of the reasons, and the reason they chose it is because it's remoteness. They're trying to land in essentially 100 square kilometer area. That sounds like a big area, but think about coming all the way from space and you're trying to pinpoint your landing. It's no different than when they do the landing zones for say capsule returns in the ocean. They actually have a fairly large area. They narrow it down, but it's still a big area that they look for and monitor and kind of swoop in on the return. In this case, they need it to come on land, which is one of the reasons why they chose Woomera.
And it's incredible to look at the target areas. So it is, as you were saying there, it's such a large area that they predict it's going to happen. And then obviously as it gets closer, but still quite a ways out, they can really narrow that down, I think, into about 100 square kilometer radius, even smaller, that they know exactly where it's going to be, which really helps, because in the Woomera protected zone, there's a national highway running right the way through it. So they can't keep that closed for too long.
Exactly. That's right. So, the timing, where it's going to be relatively, and they have the thing. So it's kind of, it'll be a fun thing for them to chase out and get. But, it's not like they can just see it very easily descending. It's a very hard thing to see, especially at night.
Well, yeah. I mean, the good thing with At Night is for us doing the live stream from 2:50 a.m. on Sunday morning. The fireball will be quite visible against the inky black sky. So we'll be bringing you that one. We'll be bringing you the capsule return all the way to landing, as I said, in a special live stream from 2:50 a.m. on Sunday morning. Brad, you're going to join me, but also Jason DeWalken from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center talking about osiris-rex. Glenn Nagel from the Canberra Tidbin Billa Tracking Station talking about staying in touch with the spacecraft. I've got a chat with Professor David Flannery from QUT talking about what these samples can teach us, and also hoping to get in touch with the project retrieval team as well. So it's going to be an awesome 70-minute live stream on Sunday morning. Hopefully people can tune in or catch us on replay. So we'll be doing that one, Brad, up nice and early on Sunday morning.
Yeah, it'll be an exciting event for everyone, and an historic one, and I think that's the cool thing about it.
All right, Brad, next up this week, it's been discovered that exposure to outer space may accelerate aging, as if we needed another thing that was going to do it to us.
Besides 2020. And look, this has been part of a very large long-term study where, there's about 30 papers released last week on this, taking data from a huge body of astronauts who spent longer duration. So we're not talking about kind of the 10-day to 15-day stints they did on the space shuttle, but the 3 and 6 month missions they're doing on the space station. All of the health problems, all of the measurements, all of these things they've been getting data on, and then applying it as a statistical look at all these astronauts. And some things that they've seen in individual cases clearly show across the board. Some things are a bit different. Some things that we kind of knew were issues like radiation are still issues like radiation. One of those big ones that is, it's something where it wasn't always a direct effect. We know there's vision problems, we know there's cardiovascular problems, bone density, all those sorts of things. The aging one was a bit of a surprise, given that it's a fairly new result in terms of seeing this effect, but it's a very clear, big result, which obviously has huge, wide implications.
Well, some prior research into the health effects of spaceflight involved the identical twins, Scott and Mark Kelly. Scott spending nearly a year on the space station while Mark stayed on the ground. It showed that the research focusing on the telomeres in the white blood cells, Scott's became elongated while he was in space, but they returned to normal once he was back to Earth. But now this new paper is studying 10 other astronauts, and as you say, they're all long duration flights of 6 months or longer, and it just seems to be that there's something else that's going on.
Yeah, there's clearly something going on, around the telomeres. And so the telomeres are essentially these coatings around your chromosomes. It's like a physical measurement of age, ultimately, in the way cells reproduce. They can kind of get an idea of how many reproductions or how many pairs are being generated. And clearly there's something going on across all these astronauts, not just Scott Kelly, as you said. And it does relate to, at least it seems, length of exposure in space. And this is the critical point. If there's one-off effects, you go up, you get the same medical effect, let's say, regardless of length of exposure, that's a little bit easier to treat than the issue gets longer or gets worse the longer you are in space. Because as we go to the moon, as we go to Mars, as we're spending months to years in space, and maybe even longer in the case of Mars, those issues will be exacerbated, and that is the problem. And how do you solve something that just gets worse and worse the more time you spend in space?
And this could put a big dampener on Artemis missions to Mars, other missions to Mars as well, if there are health impacts to these missions. It's either going to be costing a lot more money to go there, or quite simply, astronauts are just not going to want to do it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, well, NASA's not going to immediately send people there if it's not going to be safe. And that is the key issue here is, the reason things like the mission to Mars, NASA's timeline is so long is because they want people to survive, so to speak. They want people to be safe. And, we know the radiation issues, which have obviously been an obvious big one, especially going to to Mars, where you essentially exceed the safety limits for lifetime radiation exposure. These things have to be solved before humans are successfully sent there. And it's an issue when we talk about private companies or other groups sending people to, especially the moon and definitely to Mars. They're not really focusing on these issues. And this is what, groups like NASA and Europe, the European Space Agency, saying, this is a big limiting factor. If you can't solve the human part of the human space flight, they don't want to send people to their untimely demise, for lack of a better phrase. And so you gotta solve that. You gotta deal with these issues before we start doing these plans. And it's not just as simple as the technology.
Absolutely. Well, the team will be participating in NASA's one-year mission project, which is going to be called Cypher, and the team they'll be conducting telomere length dynamic studies, DNA damage studies, and looking into these long duration missions, possibly even analyzing the Hubble tardigrade, which can tolerate large doses of radiation. So there might be some gene therapy going on here. There might be some other ways to help our bodies adapt to life in space.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things that they will be looked at. And this is one of the big focuses on NASA's human spaceflight goal. And I guess it's just one of the ones that we don't necessarily always hear about. We see the new rockets being built and new capsules being tested, but there's a huge amount of people behind the scenes or doing their research trying to fix these issues before they embark on their next goals. Because if it's not fixed, it's not happening.
You can get social with Trekzone. Australia's unofficial home of Star Trek is everywhere you are. Just search for Trekzone.
And last up, Brad, this week, the International Astronomical Union might have gotten something else wrong. And by that, I mean they downgraded Pluto. Now it seems we might be a little bit closer to the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, but it's not a major cause for concern.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't really say they got it wrong. It's a new measurement, and there's a fundamental measurement that is one of these adopted values of the IAU, and that is the distance to the supermassive black hole, what we call Sagittarius-A star in our galaxy. And the important bit being is that's kind of the center of our galaxy, so you could use that. That's the reference frame, so to speak, of our galaxy. And the current adopted value is 27,700 light years, where it appears to be this new measurement is just about 2,000 kilometers closer. So we're 2,000 kilometers closer. Still, over 25,000 light years away, rather. So, way safe. So 2,000 light years seems like a lot, and it is, but 25,000 still means it's nothing to worry about.
Well, it's funny because I was watching an episode of Stargate the other day, and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye were special guest stars with Dr. McKay complaining about Pluto. So I like to find any opportunity to, have a dig at the IAU. But it's a Plutoid now. It's the first Plutoid. So they're doing the right thing. And 25,000 light years, we're arguing over a couple of thousand light years. Things are all moving so fast in the solar system. And apparently we're moving at 227 kilometers per second through the galaxy. That's everything's happening so fast.
Well, that's right. And that's actually one of the big measurements here is our rotation or our angle and our direction of orbiting around the galaxy, getting our speed, getting our distance. And so they use what's called VLBI, Very Long Baseline Interferometry. So you link up radio telescopes the same way they did to see that black hole image with the Event Horizon Telescope, but you do it in a slightly different way with different telescopes. And it gives you very precise distances, very precise measurements. It requires a lot of data, a lot of observations, and you can't do that far. So it's kind of like imagining you had an extra pair of eyes really wide out. I stand here and then you stand across the room and we both look. Well, we can use trigonometry between us to actually get an accurate distance. So yes, we do use trigonometry, and we could use it to get very precise distances. And that's exactly what they do here. And it's actually a really tricky measurement because we're embedded in our galaxy. So it's not like we could just say, hey, let's take an image from the top and see what we look like and see exactly where we are. It's not that straightforward. We have to see how far away we are. And there's a lot of things that obscure it, a lot of things that block it, like stars, like gas and dust in our galaxy. And it's one of these just fundamental measurements we have to know. We have to know where we are in our galaxy.
And this discovery was made by a combination of 4 radio telescopes across Japan. And I love this fact. What they're saying now is that these telescopes could spot a United States penny placed on the surface of the moon. So that's some pretty accurate detail going on there.
That is right. You know, these are impressive things, and it's a technique, again, that Australia has really pioneered using our radio telescopes. And it just gives you this very accurate way of seeing distances and seeing precise locations that we can't normally do it. And so, you know, obviously there's going to be some evaluation of the results, but we'll see if the adopted value, which is currently 27,700, back from the mid 80s, is updated. And it probably will be. We do update these measurements all the time, you know, and this is why we do some of these fundamental measurements. People do fundamental measurements to the moon all the time, to the sun, because these are complete reference points, just as surveyors do on the roads. This is what we do in space.
Just a final point here, Brad. These changes don't mean the Earth is plunging towards the black hole, but it gives us a more accurate map of where we are in the galaxy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's no effect on us relative to the black hole. It is all about where we are, where we're going, so to speak, and then useful for navigation and scientific purposes.
Awesome, Brad. Well, it's fun to pick apart the stories of the week with you. Looking forward to doing it again next week. And, of course, on Sunday morning as we cover Hayabusa's return. So we're going to do that all again. We've got 2 more Talkin' Science Tuesdays to go for the year and that live stream. So plenty still to come in 2020.
Yeah, there's lots to happen, and it should be exciting times.